Back in 1940, when three men, Bill Finger, Bob Kane, and Joe Robinson, were tasked with creating a new villain for Batman, they created the Joker, a character who over half a century later transcends the comic book genre. And that's no exaggeration, the Joker has drastically affected all entertainment, even culture, since his face is now forever synonymous with villainy. The very fibre of his personality and existence is linked to chaos, as the world around him always descends into anarchy.
I'm an agent of chaos.
He also infamously embodies madness too, with his freakish unpredictability, but most of all is that he's just pure evil with his unwavering lack of morality. This is what ultimately makes Todd Phillips' decision to humanize the Joker in his 2019 solo film all the more ambitious. On one side, you have those who champion it's an incredible introspection of one of entertainment's greatest villains, whereas some fear only glorifies, excuses, and even encourages reprehensible actions. And for the sake of time, I'm going to cut to the chase. I stand with the first lot, as the film itself is a statement of the passion that remains in cinema, with an intimate story, detailed production, a thoughtful ending, an astounding score, and most of all, a dedicated actor. All qualities that not only make great cinema, but more importantly, make Joker simply brilliant.
I haven't been happy 1 minute of my entire fucking life.
The film acts as a dark, intimate character study, showing how to humanize someone as evil as the Joker. This makes perfect sense since Phillips has revealed in countless interviews that his goal was always character focused, wanting to explore through an origin story why the Joker became the agent of chaos. Therefore, primarily before release, many comic book fans were in disarray as they hated the idea of a backstory, and for good reason. Surprisingly, the Joker's first ever origin came over a decade after his 1940 debut, adding credence and reason to the belief that the Joker isn't supposed to have one, as he didn't have it initially. Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight honoured this, as whenever Heath Ledger's Joker famously tells how he got his scars, he tells different accounts. The inconsistency obviously suggests he is lying, making his origin unknown, which adds to his greater mystique and terror. Simultaneously though, it makes it almost impossible to empathise with the Joker, which would fail in humanising him since all we see is a lying sadistic clown that causes nothing but chaos. This is where both Alan Moore's and Brian Bollard's 1988 The Killing Joke steps in. Their version of the Joker expands on the first ever origin he was given, but instead of just being a criminal, the Joker is first a man who struggles in society as a failed comedian. Living from paycheck to paycheck in a dilapidated home, he works hard to support his pregnant wife, but his failures to make it as a comedian and an inability to provide the luxuries he wishes for his supportive wife result in a self-loathing sentiment, reflecting upon himself as a failure, which when all considered is a far call from the emotionless Joker we've typically seen on screen. I won't even dive further into this comic since I find it an amazing story and I don't want to spoil it. However, what's important to remember is how empathetic the Joker is presented in that backstory, which helps to humanize him through the struggles people suffer. Without a doubt, Phillips saw this and took the core of this origin, twisting details, imparting far more empathy in an effort to humanize his character far greater. In fact, Phillips wastes no time as Arthur, the man before becoming the Joker, is immediately empathetic through a fantastic opener that conveys plenty about his character and the film itself. We hear nothing but radio news talking about how revolting Gotham has become whilst Arthur sits down applying his makeup, clearly telling us his job. But more striking is the fact he tries to make himself smile until he no longer can. His fingers snap away, leaving a tear to run down his cheek. Nothing complicated is being conveyed here, but it's how effective and clear they transfer the message. Arthur is someone who is miserable, trying to ignore the pain, a pain that can be linked to the rubbish that clogs the streets of Gotham. Obviously, it's not literally saying the rubbish is making him sad, but what it represents, acting as a metaphor for the city's rampant poverty, disregard of the common man, left to the side of the curb. So although brief and simple, the film's opener already makes us feel sad for Arthur, as the film has told us this is the man before the titular character, a man who seems broken but is still trying, and that this film is going to humanize his transformation to the Joker. The empathy is only cranked up with the following scene, which is also a part of this brilliant opener since the title cards are yet to appear. Similar to Alan Moore's Killing Joke, Phillips shows the Joker is a hard-working man before he becomes the Clown Prince as he is presented working his job. Though instead of showing his sadness, which we know he feels from the brief scene before, he instead smiles against the backdrop of a run-down Gotham and its glum faces. Logically then, we the audience empathize with Joker since we begin to value him. He's likable as he's trying to make the world a better place by not just playing his part in society, but also trying to bring joy to others, even though we know he is suffering himself. That reason for sadness as well in Arthur's life has light brought upon it for a moment when we see he is treated unjustly at the end of the opener. The only people who take notice of Arthur's hard work and positive energy are bullies, a pack of teens that steal his sign and beat him in an alley. Isn't this just unfair? The one person who is working hard with a smile on his face is given not gratitude, but pain. To make matters worse, it seems like no one gives a damn. No one tries to stop them, even when Arthur, who is robbed in front of everyone, pleads for help. Therefore, within the context of everything given in this brilliant opening sequence, Arthur is emphasized as an empathetic character. He is first presented as someone who's unhappy but still works hard and attempts to bring life to the bleak city. Yet instead of being noticed with reward, he is beaten, unfairly punished, put down by society and ignored. Beyond the opening of the film, Phillips adds salt to the wounds and a greater sense of injustice as Arthur is then blamed and punished for the destruction of the sign. We obviously know it wasn't his fault. He was literally beaten by it, but his boss refuses to believe it, resulting in taking money out of his already thin check. This highlights the unjust treatment Arthur suffers before becoming Joker, which starts to make things like Arthur's freaky grin in the moment, even his odd behaviour throughout the film, come off as not because he's innately crazy, but this world is maybe making him so. Either way, this is something I will focus on later, since I want to focus and take a moment to appreciate the narrative design here. Every event, even the smallest things such as the sign getting destroyed, has been given careful consideration, has been given consequences. A world without reactions to actions doesn't feel alive, but ones where the smallest things, like a sign getting destroyed, something in the moment that I overlooked because how important could it be to the film, to the creation of the Joker? Well, it's fundamental. There's consequences to something as small as this, which not only make the world feel alive, but human. The little detail of the consequences for the sign is a testament to the film's brilliant narrative, how every event builds upon itself, like a train going to its next stop. Phillips uses this approach of building upon each event, each stop, as a way to reinforce or introduce entirely new empathetic reasoning for Arthur. Think about it. After being beaten by the sign, which gets destroyed in the process, he is then unfairly troubled for it, resulting in him taking a weapon to protect himself as no one else will, which just results in him losing his job when it slips out during work. Then on the same day, he is thrusted into danger when upper class bullies beat him until this time he retaliates and shoots back. Everything has been built upon, even the empathy for Arthur, as in the later scene of him shooting those Wall Street guys, you still feel bad for him. Of course, his actions are not justified, but we understand and can empathize with him in the situation, as not only was he having a crappy day, getting sacked, but also because he was the one put in danger again. He wasn't the perpetrator, rather the victim, until he had enough and fought back. In fact, this same empathetic trick of being in danger is taken to another level when Phillips begins to mix other ideas, such as injustice. Of course, I'm now speaking about the revelations of Arthur's childhood, which not only shows he was in danger countless times, but that he has always been treated unjustly. He was so violently abused as a child that he actually cocooned himself, forcing his brain to forget that his own mother was involved in his traumatic abuse. His uncomfortable, sudden laughter, a neurological condition, now links to the severe brain trauma he received from his childhood. I wonder what more could be attributed to that abuse. This revelation within the context of the movie immediately makes him extremely empathetic, as we not only feel bad for him being abused so badly, but who it was by the person he's been caring for, someone who he's supposed to feel safe around. Also, let's not forget that Arthur hasn't just been caring for his mother, he's been doing so at the sacrifice, at the detriment to his own health. These factors culminate, making this reveal Phillips' most powerful empathetic trick, as it conveys multiple reasons to feel sorry for Arthur, and flips what little solace he had into greater pain. What's even worse and a greater tragedy is that it's not even what Arthur suffers or has experienced that makes him empathetic and human, but his goals which he cannot attain. He has many desires, one of them wanting to be loved, which he doesn't have in his life, arguably not even from his own mother. He also desires a dream job of being a comedian and making people smile, another thing that makes him likable, but he's not funny as his mother bluntly puts it. Moreover, he simply wants to be recognized by society, particularly Thomas Wayne, a man who he believed to be his father but wasn't. All of these problems he faces with these desires are universally understood, and Phillips has given a bag full of them to Arthur. Through all of this, he ensures that we, the audience, can relate since we all have dreams, which helps make Arthur empathetic. But his failure to attain them is also uncomfortably human. We don't just relate, but we can truly feel that pain now that Arthur feels. An intimate pain that we typically hide, connecting us instantly to Arthur. Considering all that's been said and how empathetic Arthur is, the emergence of the Joker is therefore still empathetic, even with the chaos and crazy. One of the reasons for this is because we understand now that Arthur's Joker is representing more than just anarchy, but all those disenfranchised with the current climate of Gotham, its lack of care for the common man. It's not the change we want in society, nor is it good or justified, but because of the empathy imparted through Arthur, through Joker, the chaos now has an understanding, one we can empathize with, or at the very least, sympathize with. Therefore, it must be said, what Phillips manages to achieve is special, as he actually makes Arthur's transformation to the Joker not as 100% evil as it has been in the past. It's not like he is an evil entity. Instead of hating him and the chaos, which has always been presented as evil, you find yourself thinking far more and less able to simply point a finger at what's bad. Even the Joker himself has always been presented as someone that wasn't created because of something, but just wanted to see the world burn. However, with this origin story that Todd Phillips puts forward, humanizes the Joker so much through the multitudes of empathy that he poses the question, was this Joker, preventable? To me, he wasn't born due to his mental illness alone, nor his crazy ideas, but possibly because of the tragedy of his life. His childhood itself is suggested to be the source of his mental illness, which then goes on to play a huge role in his transition to the Joker. If Arthur wasn't abused, wasn't treated so tragically when he was a child, lied to by his mother, would Arthur even have these problems that plague him? This also means the movie is not necessarily saying there's a Joker in everyone, as there are integral contingent factors that help play a significant role. In fact, Joaquin Phoenix himself chimed in with this idea and portrayal of Joker. It's hard not to have sympathy for somebody who experienced that level of childhood trauma. An overstimulated medulla looks for and perceives danger everywhere. For someone in that state, does it mean his actions make sense or are justified? Obviously not. There's a point where he crosses the line where I'm no longer able to stick by his side, but it allowed me to approach him with less judgment and more compassion than what I had when I first read the script. So to summarize, you can essentially understand why I have been focusing on empathy so much, since there's no doubt that Phillips purposely planted many tricks. In fact, they are aligned to a model by Jerry Jenkins, 10 Ways to Create an Immediate Empathetic Character. For context, Jenkins is a #1 bestseller, boasting a large catalogue of successful books, therefore I feel he knows his stuff when it comes to writing. Moreover, he suggests that if a character has any of these traits, it makes them empathetic, and in the film, as I've been pointing out, we see Arthur fits more than one of these. He's likable right at the beginning as he works hard and tries to bring joy. He is treated unjustly through being beaten at the beginning, abused as a child, which also links to being in danger. Even looking after another at the detriment to oneself is present with Arthur's care for his mother. It really goes on and on. This model, which may not have been directly used, proves Phillips tried to add as much empathetic reasoning as his base to humanize the Joker, giving him struggles that are notched up but still relatable. Many people can relate to Arthur's attempts to work hard, make others happy to only be slapped in the face. People can relate to being unfairly treated, to being in danger that wasn't their fault, to having desires and so on. In fact, I should stop saying it's people who relate, but more importantly, humans. This makes Arthur, the Joker, more human than he's ever been, something that many may feel uncomfortable reckoning with.
Is it just me? Or is it getting crazier out there?
The story and character journey of the Joker is not the only thing that's given careful consideration, as there is an incredible level of detail spread throughout the production design. Carrying out the job to bring life to the sets and make Gotham City an equally important character as Joker was Mark Friedberg. Being a veteran production designer and a native-born New Yorker, the city of which Gotham is based upon, he was easily qualified for the role. The only problem though was he once swore to himself to never work on another comic book affiliated film or big blockbuster. He felt from his own bad experience that the creative process of such blockbusters deprived the intimacy and passion of cinema through an overuse of effects and explosions. Interestingly, when you know the film he is possibly referring to, you'll completely understand, since that film was The Amazing Spider-Man 2. You can kind of gather that he's old school and has a huge appreciation of what was big before comic book films. Therefore, when he saw what Phillips wanted to do and that his film would be nothing like the over-top experience which left him with a bad taste in his mouth, he was all in. Thankfully so too, as his experience of actually living within New York would become critical to the weathered depiction of Gotham. Phillips really wanted a grounded story which he always pictured within the 80s of New York. This was, for one, to ensure it's separate from fellow peers within the comic book film industry, but mainly because his memories of the city being run down synergize with the darker vision. His memories don't fail him too. According to an article by the New York Times in 1981, the turn into the new decade marked the city's worst year of crime ever. The Big Apple became a very violent place, and to make matters worse was the garbage strikes. Mountains of rubbish were left on the streets, which, coupled with the worst crime rate the city has ever experienced and run-down, vandalized buildings, then 1980s New York would be the perfect playground to drive anyone crazy. Still, they ultimately had to execute this, and so the streets were made to look cluttered. Extra buildings were added with CG to help the city feel claustrophobic, almost like it's suffocating and closing in on its people. Friedberg also ensured that there was a heavy emphasis on trash. He and the team went so far to even have different types of rubbish to depict the state of a particular area. The garbage became a big part of the film by it appearing in plenty of shots, which was clearly acting as a metaphor for Gotham, itself clearly being neglected. Also, I know these are little details, but that's what I love in cinema that gets brushed over these days. Unfortunately, in the MCU, which I do adore, I really do, I think it's just fair to say that they have the tendency to veer to shortcuts instead of going the extra mile. Earlier films such as Iron Man would have specific robotic suits built entirely as helpful references for CG in post. However, now they don't even have a full suit, they don't create it anymore. Instead, they just get a helmet and CGI everything, which has had the possible effect of downgrading the visuals. It's not just the people though, but entire sets are also just covered with blinding amounts of luminous green screen. So much is unnecessarily a shot with these methods and effects, exemplifying the shortcuts I'm talking about. The use of effects are relied upon instead of only being used when it is needed to enhance the product. And to emphasize, it's not that effects are bad. On the contrary, they're integral and a huge step forward in realizing ideas, concepts, and entire visions. In fact, Joker itself uses effects, but on top of what is practical, on top of the already implemented details, adding the polish to an already well-crafted piece. And of course, the film's grounded approach affords it not to rely on effects, but even if it had to use more, you get the feeling they would try to do everything in their power to do it practically first, as much of it by hand instead of just cutting corners. That is why the production of Joker is special. It feels unique, it feels handmade in a time when so many big films are focused on grand spectacle, large explosions, mass amounts of effects instead of the little intricate details. And I'll tell you something, sometimes it is the little things that leave a lasting impact. Typically, the phrase "you can't please everyone" is true, as people clearly have problems with the movie's humanization of Joker. However, as mentioned before, I always expected more people to take problems with the actual premise of the film, since the Joker has never really had a nailed-on backstory. But when watching the movie, coming to the end, we have this moment. It's here when the idea that the crazy clown with a mysterious backstory we've always known from the comics becomes plausible. You begin to notice that the entire film has always had Arthur or Joker involved in every scene. It's his story, so entirely plausible, in fact likely, that what we've just seen is something that this crazy man sitting in this room is telling, maybe even thinking. As a result, there is now a sense of doubt in what we've just seen the entire film, as the Joker is an unreliable narrator. We cannot truly believe him if he has told this story. It could be totally imagined, which there's groundwork for. They constantly propose the idea that this could all be made up, since it wouldn't be the first time. We've seen throughout the film that Arthur has vivid imagination, to the point he pretends he has relationships. He even projects his wants on Murray Franklin in a dreamlike state. However, for me there is another reason that's even stronger for why the Joker possibly made this entire story up. The moment when Batman's mother and father are killed. It's ingrained in our brains as the time when Bruce's parents die by a random thug. Yet, here it's a goon, inspired by the Joker, that killed Wayne's parents. Meaning somehow that Joker is responsible for the creation of Batman. This is far too coincidental to happen, but it's also how you can imagine a man, a clown fixated and obsessed with Batman, would try to create a story where he inadvertently affects him. However, of course, there's also reasoning against this idea of everything being made up, one of them being that surely this film wouldn't be for nothing. And that's why for me this ending works so well. It satisfies those people who religiously claim Joker shouldn't have an origin story and those who don't mind. The technique is nothing new, but it's done well and fits the character Joker brilliantly to have an ending that's not definitive, one that's ambiguous and as mysterious as the clown himself.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the crib.
The importance of music in the film should never be forgotten, since it serves two critical functions. The first is one of which is most common in film, that the music is a storytelling device, in this case informing the audience of Arthur's internal mental state. The beginning scene itself is a great example of this introspective storytelling. After Arthur is beaten, left on the floor in pain, you'll notice the sound of a cello. This is an instrument that appears a lot throughout the entire film since it represents Arthur. In this particular scene though, the cello is played timidly, implying a lack of something for Arthur, power or happiness, maybe both. However, far more interesting, at least to me, about the scene is something that was unbeknownst the first few times, that an orchestra is playing in this same scene. Hilda confirmed this to BMI, revealing that it's done to represent Arthur hiding and pushing away something from within. This information now adds further insight to the overlooked detail of when Arthur squirts water out of his flower. Many interpret this as Arthur believing his life is a comedy, so in his pain, he plays a punchline with a little trick. Although I believe this to be a factor, I don't believe it's the only one. Now with the knowledge that the entire orchestra was playing quietly, I also now believe Arthur does the trick as a way to dampen the beast within him, trying to make light of a serious situation, so that he doesn't have to wrestle with what is buried deep within, what we know as the Joker. And that's just one of the two main functions of music in the film. The other one is that it acts as an external expression for the character. In other words, Arthur has music within him that is expressed outwardly through dance. Some may say this function of music is odd, especially when you're trying to go for a grounded feel. However, it actually works. The critical reason as to why it doesn't seem so stupid is because it's cathartic. Arthur's infatuation with dance and music is a coping mechanism for his life, so it actually has significant plausible reasoning for being here. Therefore, as seen in the film, Arthur tries to create room in his life for music through his job as a clown where he often dances. Following this insight too, it now explains why his comment, "I actually love this job," in response to being fired for a career where many would frown upon, felt so sincere. Regardless, it doesn't even matter, as I cannot talk about the music and dance within the film without talking about the infamous bathroom scene. After killing 3 upper-class businessmen, Arthur retreats into a public restroom and is panicking until he suddenly dances with real elegance and grace. This clearly proves the significance of how music helps him deal with his life. He dances, calming himself down, seeing a clearer reflection of what he tries to hide beneath. There's really a moment of calm in a time when there shouldn't be. Arthur's ritual-like dance allows the Joker to take over, and now that flair and music inside of him takes over as he walks to the door of the woman he obsesses over. Even towards the end of the film, when Arthur is preparing for the Murray Franklin show, he dances in pure ecstasy. Conveniently, the cold harsh filter of the film before is gone, as if Arthur finally feels happy and one with himself. Arthur is also dancing in his most expressive manner in the film, and this could also be because he needs a more powerful dance, as not only is he shifting into the Joker, but he is also still dealing with the remaining feelings left after killing his own mother. Unfortunately though, this dance and its little details are overlooked due to the most iconic, the staircase scene, happening straight after. And to be honest, it's for relatively good reason why this is the most popular, since it is Arthur's most flamboyant and expressive dance, suggesting he is ramping up at this point in time in the film, reaching a crescendo to his full transition and acceptance of the Joker. The music reinforces this since, well, we hear not just a lone cello with periodic accompaniments and soft thumps, but a whole orchestration. Therefore, implying Arthur is happy here feels more free and complete as the music is also becoming more complete and louder. Isn't that amazing? I love this detail provided with music. It gives the viewer a greater chance to understand Arthur, probably better than himself, whilst the other function of it shows what Arthur himself understands and feels, since he will express it. If he feels more happy and confident, his dances have more flair and appear far more often. If not, his dances become timid. It's just an amazing amount of detail, and I can only say bravo. Truly, bravo to the composer and filmmakers.
Murray, one small thing.
Yeah.
When you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker?
I also obviously cannot talk about the brilliance of Joker without talking about the man who gave life to the controversial character. I'm so certain this role couldn't be done to this level without Phoenix, and if it could, his performance has erased any ideas of who would be able to. The role felt tailor-made for him, which makes sense as Phillips always envisioned the actor. And why wouldn't he? Joaquin is established, esteemed as one of the best actors of his generation. Besides an Oscar win for Joker, he has 3 Oscar nominations. It's fair to say he has always shown a dedication to the craft, which is further exemplified when he fed himself an apple a day so that he could just drop over 50 pounds for Joker. Most important though is what he brings as an actor, and to illustrate this I will refer to a popular interview on Graham Norton. Random, I know, but trust me, it's relevant. In one of his interviews with an illustrious cast of actors, there was bound to be some acting wisdom imparted, which was given by possibly one of the greatest to ever do it, Tom Hanks. In a funny bit with Tom Holland, he explained a good tool for an actor to show range is to recite a line or act in as many varying emotional possibilities. Happy, sad, excited, angry, terrified, etc. You get the point. This idea in particular is here times 100, as whenever Joaquin would be told a slightly different thing to do, he'd manage to switch up the same scene with drastically different moods. This is the mark of a great actor, one who gives you options to explore possibilities. It in the end shows how precise, deliberate and calculated Joaquin was when embracing the Joker due to the tools he has at his disposal. That's why it's somewhat shocking that they didn't even make this film with a nailed-on imprint of how Joker will be. Usually that's a bad thing, but in this case, it actually aids the film and the character since the Joker himself is famously known to be unpredictable. So having a nailed-on script that follows every inch of ink would feel wrong. You can even argue that the creative process embraces the soul of Joker, which is due to the collaboration of both lead actor and director. Whenever something didn't feel right, Phillips allowed the actor to flex his acting chops, bring in aspects to the character that Phillips wanted but didn't know how to realize. The creation of the bathroom scene is a great example of this. It's an aspect that took them time to figure out. Phillips was bouncing many ideas off Joaquin, but neither could find the right one. However, the director, Phillips, knew that there should possibly be a dance, so then played a piece of the score composed by Hilda, and allowed Joaquin to improvise, resulting in what we see in the final product, a dance that felt right for the moment, but wouldn't have come about if it was pre-written, because how can someone understand that they need a dance such as this in reaction to what happens in the film? The answer is not many would think of that. It's a spur of the moment thing, something that only I feel the Joker would actually do, and Joaquin managed to tap into the mind of the Clown Prince, not just once but the entire film. His performance captures the essence of his character, forever putting Joaquin Phoenix's rendition of the Joker as one of my all-time favourites in cinema. Ultimately, Todd Phillips' Joker is a brilliant film, at least to me. I understand and agree it's not perfect, nor is it the best, but it's definitely great. How can it not be? The film itself can be taught in film classes in the future, showing writers how to create an empathetic character as Phillips humanizes Arthur through an array of methods. That's not all who this film can inspire though. Its vivid detail of the world around Arthur, immaculate attention to detail in the production is not just something for future generations, but a reminder to those currently working in the industry that the details matter, the little things matter. Music too, a partner to film, some may even say it's subservient, is platformed in this film as the composer taps into Arthur's psychological state, informing more about him than he himself knows. And to put the cherry on top, the icing on the cake, the film consists of a Hall of Fame performance by one of the best actors today. So like I said before, how can it not be? How is this film anything but great? Well, the punchline here is that Joker is simply brilliant.